This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Let's talk about pets, baby. Let's talk about ticks and fleas. All the fun things that we see. Smart tips and tricks guaranteed.
Hey pet friends, welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk About Pets. Today we have a special guest with us, Dr. Stacey Beddoe. She was born and raised in Missouri and purchased her first companion animal practice in 2007. After outgrowing her facility pretty quickly, she built a new 7,500 square foot facility in 2013. As her practice continued to grow, it went from a 2-doctor practice to a 6-doctor practice, and she bought a second one in 2020. In 2022, she sold both of her practices and is now enjoying a semi-retired life here in Florida. Doing some part-time relief work, Dr. Beddoe has been happily married for 23 years. She has a 2-year-old Frenchie named Franny. Let's welcome her to our show.
It's good to be here.
I'm so glad you could join us for bad pet advice. It's usually found online, but not always. I'm sure you have experience with that over the years.
I've had a few suggestions from clients and people. Yeah.
I found an interesting study by the U.S. Pet Market Outlook for 2021 and 2022 about the most important sources of information people look for when they have questions about their pets. And it says about 60% ask their veterinarian for advice. The other 40% are saying they go off of past experiences, other pet owners, that includes family or friends, and websites, which is good old Dr. Google. While only 60% are coming to the professionals for advice, the rest are asking their uncle's cousin who had a dog with that one problem that one time 10 years ago.
Yeah. Breeders would be another one that usually trumps veterinarians. We actually had a meme poster to kind of keep the attitude light on this subject in the treatment room in the hospital that I used to own. It said, clients going to breeders for veterinary advice is like women going to pimps for gynecological advice. And it's true. Sometimes it's hard to keep a straight face when the client is armed with how the breeder told them to take care of their puppy when we are the experts of all breeds, but breeders feel like they're the expert of their breed. So those are always entertaining.
I do like that you guys could make light of that fact just because you cannot escape it. You might as well put a little positive spin on it, just something to help you guys get through the day, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
I enjoy that. I do have a story to share, an example of some bad pet advice that actually kind of happened recently. We had a Yorkie come in, a little tiny kid, about 6 years old, presenting to us because, well, mom had been putting some ivermectin drops in his eyes because she was under the impression that was the way to treat cataracts. So when she was not seeing results from the drops in the eyes, as she was expecting to see a significant improvement, she figured she would go ahead and up her dosaging. And by up her dosaging, I mean she decided to go ahead and give 2 tablespoons of ivermectin by mouth, which unfortunately has an undesired outcome. Ivermectin is very potent, and needless to say, this was not the solution for treating cataracts. And good example of how getting your information from your dad's cousin's grandpa, uncle, somebody may not have the best outcome for you.
Yeah, I feel like COVID really catapulted the uses of ivermectin out the ceiling. I had all kinds of people contacting me. I had my own uncle contacting me to try to get some black market ivermectin for COVID protection. I can in good conscience do that for you guys. I think what clients really need to understand is the amount of guilt if you are wrong, if the advice that you're getting is not correct and you're causing permanent damage or death. Are you willing to handle that guilt? That's where my heart goes to in that situation. I mean, unfortunately, it took that experience probably for her to be more aware, a little bit more cynical about the advice that she gets. So what I hope that listeners come away with is you can seriously harm your pet with wherever the advice is coming from. can seriously harm your pet. Don't jump into an action that may give you consequences that you're not signing up to endure, because it can be seriously dangerous.
An important takeaway is because you saw it on Facebook or you Googled it doesn't necessarily mean it's safe or good advice. So speaking of Facebook advice, I actually have a post for you. Though there may be some truth behind it, I don't think it's readily recommended by the veterinary community. It says that cats can drink seawater or salt water, basically unlike a human or a dog can. They have kidneys that filter out the salt and use the water content to hydrate their bodies. Now, I know cats originated as like a desert type species and don't necessarily require as much water as other species, though they do develop more kidney issues due to this lack of water later on in life. I don't doubt that they could filter out more salt water than, say, we could, but I don't think you should just go get a bowl of beach water for your sassy cat and be like, okay, here's some water for today, and you drink like water out of a bottle or something. It doesn't equal out, if you would.
A girl coming from Missouri, we didn't really have a salt toxicity cases. It just being in Florida for a year, working part-time, mind you, already been involved with 2 salt toxicities. So the seawater is a real deal and it's a real threat. So that is disheartening to know that that's out there circulating.
And they put it out there like a fun fact, like, like about cats that may be kind of dangerous of a fact, actually. So just be careful where you're getting your information from. If you are looking for good advice sources online, on the show, we're typically recommending Veterinary Partner. It's a website where you're going to find articles written by board-certified veterinarians, specifically for pet owners without all the medical jargon. Did you have some resources that you use when you're trying to offer educational options for your clients?
I had a client in her late 20s, early 30s, and she's doing a great job taking care of her ancient Chihuahua. And I'm saying ancient as 18 years old and still doing pretty well on some heart medicine, but overall trucking with life pretty well. And she just kept using this buzzword on research. I've done research on this injection. I've done research on this medication. And I was like, where are you researching? And it ended up, she was on Reddit. When you're doing your research on a platform where anybody and everybody can say whatever they want and they don't have to back it up, you can really get down in some really bad rabbit holes. And good research is not hard to do on the internet, but you do need to make sure that the author of these articles are DVM, certified veterinarians. If you're looking at nutrition, making sure that veterinarian is board certified in nutrition, or corporate hospitals do a great job of posting informative articles on their hospital website. If you're wanting to know about diabetes and insulin, you can usually find articles from corporate veterinary hospitals written by one of their medical directors or one of their doctors. And they usually provide really good information. Anything that's been stamped with approval with the AVMA. Making sure that you know who is writing whatever you're looking at is really, really important. Because if it just says Jane Smith with no credentials, no bio, she just shows up one day and decides to, let's say, make pet food for a living, like that's a red flag.
Well, she knows because she used to breed dogs, obviously.
Right. And she has her own dog. Like Farmer's Dog is a perfect example. I looked up the bio on the guy from Farmer's Dog, and his story is heart gripping. He woke up one day, had a dog, and was like, you know what? I'm going to make dog food that my dog will eat. That's it. It was genuine. I mean, it's coming from a good heart. But as far as any type of scientific knowledge, he has zero. It's just, well, I want to feed something that's not processed and that my dog will eat. Dogs will eat a lot of things, including each other's poop.
Do the research for the appropriate nutrients that a pet food should contain. Maybe your dog is going to eat it, and that's great. Like, a palatable food is important.
Correct.
But what it could be lacking is nutrients that may be needed and may lead to health issues down the line. Those things that say veterinary improved on them really just means a vet at some point was like, yeah, I approve that. To me, one vet one time is not enough for you to trust a product. Saying veterinary approved must mean it's safe in a lot of owners' heads. But hold on, that's not necessarily true, it does deserve a little bit more research before you go ahead with it.
Correct. A lot of people think, well, veterinarians are doctors, so they just make a ton of money. New grads are making more than I did starting out 25 years ago. But for the most part, we have bills and we need money. Nowadays, there's these food companies, just like, celebrities get bombarded with merchandise that they can sell for them. Companies are coming to these veterinarians and saying, hey, I'll give you $25,000 if you tell people my product is good and I can put your name on my product. When it's just one or two veterinarians and they clearly are paid for their advertisement or their support, it kind of waters down the validity of what they're saying. Just like people are paid for their endorsements, veterinarians can fall under that same temptation of making a quick $20,000 or $15,000 to say a product is good when they really don't know it's good.
So I asked the people of Facebook to share their bad pet advice stories. I mean, stuff that they've been told or things that they've seen online or out and about. A really great resource for this actually was groomers. They hear it all. And I can vouch for that because I was a groomer for 11 years and I too heard my fair share of bad advice. I did receive some great stories I can't wait to share with you. So Nicole Nagler, spelled Naugler from Facebook. I am so sorry if I said that wrong. I'm not the greatest at pronouncing names. As a groomer, someone called and asked how to kill the fleas on her dog's head. She said her friend told her to wrap the dog's body in plastic bags to suffocate the fleas, but she didn't want to put the bag over the dog's head, which, by the way, I'm glad she didn't. This would have been a different situation altogether. She was just wondering what to do to kill the ones that were on the head. And so what my first instinct here is to say, okay, girl, I need you to stop what you're doing and take your dog out of the bag. Because at this point, she already put her dog in the bag and now she's seeing the fleas on the head and she's like, oh, what do I do now? So let's start with stop everything, let your dog out of the bag. You know what I mean?
We live in such a day and age that flea prevention is such an easy thing. It amazes me that people make it harder than what it should be. When I first started practice, the only flea prevention that I had at my disposal was Frontline. That was really it. Maybe some flea collars. And so people were really doing the Dawn baths and trying to drown the fleas. Part of it was ignorance on the flea life cycle and knowing how many eggs have dropped off into the environment and that it's only half the battle taking care of the fleas that you can see. There's millions of fleas in another life stage, and in the pupa stage, there's nothing that can kill them. So it's amazing to me we have such great once-a-month oral preventions now, and people refuse to do it the easy way. Maybe because of expense, they think that they're going to find the cheaper alternative with the plastic bags. I've seen they've tried to dry coconut oil or castor oil or tobacco products. I've had one client put smokeless tobacco topically on their pet. Most of the time when they've done that, I would usually tell people, guys, if it was that easy, then these flea companies would not be making millions of dollars on their flea prevention. If everyone can just go get some Skoal and apply on their dog's back, like why would there be a market for these once a month orals? And usually the clients go, I think you maybe have a point. They kind of see the truth in the madness. My own personal OBGYN, love her to death. She thought she was going to save a few bucks by getting some over-the-counter flea prevention, and she spent triple what she would have on an emergency visit one night while all three cats were seizing out of control from the over-the-counter flea prevention. So I'm giving them muscle relaxers. I'm trying to decontaminate them. And she puts her arm around me and goes, it looks like the cats are being killed more than the fleas, because the fleas were doing fine. Like they were just having a go time, and these cats are not conscious and they're violently seizing. And she bought flea prevention from me for the rest of the time. Our temptation of wanting to find something cheaper that works the same. But I'm here to tell you, there's just not an easier way than once a month prescription oral prevention.
Really, spending the money for proper prevention is so worth it, especially here in the South where the bugs, the fleas, all the things, mosquitoes, they are abundant. It's like the best environment for them. A peace of mind that comes from not having to battle a flea infestation is definitely worth that one pill a month or one application to the back of your
I
neck.
absolutely agree. I had a guy who had 19 cats. And then every year told me I've never had a flea problem. I can't afford flea prevention for 19 cats. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I get it. I try to give them all the discounts and the coupons and the rebates. One year in the fall, all 19 cats got fleas, and it was a mess. So, yeah, just because it hasn't happened before does not mean it cannot happen.
Next up, I actually have a review for a product called Veterinary Formula Clinical Ear Care Therapy Cat and Dog Ear Cleanser to help soothe itchiness, clean ear canal, and debris buildup. It is an 8-ounce bottle. I have a 1-star review for verified purchase from, let's see, we're going to go with Thompson. That feels right. I don't really know. Anyway, Thompson said, tiny bottle worked for one ear. And he continued to say, waste of money, use a hose. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Thinking about this, the size of an ear canal, I just don't think an ear canal even comes close to holding 8 ounces of any liquid in there at once. So I think that using one bottle on one ear feels excessive.
I mean, he does have a good point where I know early in my career, I was under flushing ears. They do need a lot of volume to flush out. So I will say that there is maybe a little bit of a 1/2 ounce of truth in his review, but if he's just using ear flush without knowing what kind of secondary infection he's got, a lot of times there's an underlying allergy. So needing to know what the cause of the ear infection is more the chunk of the success than just what you use and the amount that you use. I was giving him the benefit of the doubt that he was being superlative. This is how bad this product is when your garden hose works better. I'm hoping that is what he means. I hope he's not being serious, but he might be. I have had people put some really crazy things in dogs' ears. I've had them put oral antibiotics in that good old-fashioned castor oil for ear mites and tea tree oils, and it really does a good job burning the crap out of the ear lining. I've had a few people come in for emergency Q-tip removal. Some people dropped their Q-tip down too far and couldn't get it right back out.
I can totally see that. When I was a grooming instructor, I was always teaching my students and telling owners that they have no business getting in their pet's ear with a Q-tip. They're risking it breaking off and causing some type of injury. Probably not a ruptured eardrum due to the dog's ear canal being in an L shape, but it is possible. Like, you don't want to risk it, and causing some trauma to the inside of the ear canal because you're irritating that sensitive skin down there.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
As an owner or a non-veterinary professional, you really shouldn't just be digging in a dog's ear with Q-tips. If a Q-tip action is needed, I suggest letting a veterinary professional handle it. In the case that a broken Q-tip incident may occur, they are already in the place where they have the things to care for such an instance. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but it's possible. And at least you are in the right hands.
I have a funny story about a product review. I had a client enraged, very angry with me. She could not get the medicine out of the bottle. Okay. Those of you who are familiar with medications, this was a bottle of meloxicam, or a nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory. It's a liquid. The company already pre-packages the medicine in a bottle, right? So we're not transferring it to another bottle. We're just the bottle as distributed by the company. She was livid with me that there was something wrong with the bottle. The medicine was not coming out. And so I was like, bring it in, we'll fix it, we'll get you a new bottle, whatever the case may be. I asked her to show me how she was getting the medicine out of the bottle. She was putting the syringe on the top like she was instructed to do, right? She was not, though, letting gravity help her, and she was not turning the bottle upside down. So she was just like opening the syringe on the top of the bottle as the bottle is sitting upright. I hope I'm giving you a good picture of what's happening. I was thrilled to fix her problem and said, you know what? I have got your solution. I took the bottle, I turned it upside down, and the liquid flew, freely into the syringe, and I handed it back to her. And she incessantly apologized for all the mean things that she said and left the office extremely embarrassed. If she could have given a 1-star review for that Medicam bottle, she would have. But I think who deserved the 1-star review was the operator. As a clinic, we should have been better at demonstrating you do have to turn the bottle upside down to get the liquid. Some things that we think of as everyday, minute detail just aren't for some people because they don't do it every day. I don't know if you guys appreciate this, but after that, Atopica, cyclosporin, came out with a bottle of liquid for cats. There is a pipeline that goes down into the bottle that sucks the solution up without turning the bottle upside down. And so I fully believe that they learned from Medicam's mistake.
A doctor at the practice I work with had been told by a new doodle puppy owner that the breeder recommended not to get the puppy vaccinated until it was 6 months old, when it was going to be strong enough to handle vaccines.
Now, here's my soapbox about vaccines. There is a natural waxing and waning about how people feel about vaccines. You will notice, I think it happens with every pandemic disease, the individuals that have lived through the outbreak of such disease. Let's take parvo, for example. Parvo happened in kind of the early to mid 70s in most places. And there are some doctors and technicians that remember when parvo broke out and how horrible it was. Those people who lived through the initial outbreak of the disease is usually in very much high support of the vaccine because they saw what the disease can do. As vaccines limit the diseases from happening, as that generation that lived through that outbreak retires, whatever, the new generation sees the vaccine as unnecessary and dangerous and not worth the risk. That new generation will stop vaccinating. And then guess what? That disease comes back. So we just had a really nasty measles outbreak in Central Florida. Why? People stop vaccinating. Why? Because they've never seen what measles can do. We see that in veterinary medicine as well. I had a lady in full seriousness in the lobby of the hospital telling all the clients, do not vaccinate your dogs. It will give them autism. And she was absolutely serious about it. She thought she was doing a public service to tell everybody, hey, don't vaccinate. You are going to cause your dog autism. I'd like to see my first dog with autism, but I don't think that's actually a thing yet. Vaccines have a very polarized opinion, and all I can do is educate and tell people of my experience because I've definitely seen enough parvo puppies. I also share the facts with people. The puppy's immune system, as it's developing, it's going to lose any of mom's protection. All of them loses it by 4 months of age. So it does not make sense to wait and vaccinate at 6 months of age. We can certainly adjust. Maybe we don't need to give the whole distemper parvo parainfluenza combo. Maybe we can start with just a parvo vaccine for whatever the case may be. And I think it's a good combination of educating the client, show them the science, show them the experience behind what you're saying, and also listen to them and whatever reservations they have. Try to hear that and make a vaccine protocol that they're happy with too. A lot of times you can meet in the middle. As long as the owner feels heard, that's what's important. They don't want to feel stupid for their questions, and their concerns are valid. And safety is a valid concern. No veterinary professional can tell you that it's completely impossible to have an anaphylactic reaction to a vaccine. But giving that owner recognition that you're on the same team, that you want safety and efficacy for that puppy too, you don't want to see them back in 2 weeks with parvo, is also very achievable.
One thing I can say is I have not met anyone that got into this field because they just want to cause chaos. You know what I mean? Like, everyone I know is in it because they want what's best for pets and people. Mostly pets, but people are a big part of what we do anyway. And we take an oath just like a human medical professional would, pledging to do no harm.
Exactly. You really think about that statement when owners don't want to listen to my advice about how to keep the secondary skin infections, the ear infections at bay. I always remind them, look, it is better for me for your pet to be sick, right? I make more money if you're coming to me every couple of weeks. So listen to me when I'm telling you this is what you need to do to keep your dog healthy. I'm not in it to see you every 2 to 3 weeks. I want to only see you a couple of times a year for wellness items to keep your pet well. I don't want to see them when they're sick. I mean, I could tell you no information and let you go do what you want and let you come back to see me when they have ear infections, broken a tooth, and when they've sprained an ankle or a knee or whatever. Like, I mean, I could benefit from your lack of knowledge that I'm trying to give you. Sometimes that truth kind of hits them in the face. Oh, yeah, you're right. Maybe you are trying to save me some heartache and some expense down the road. We are on the same team. And I know sometimes we all have different opinions, different experiences, but we are all on the same team. And if we can just remember that and kind of take a step back from our own pride or belief systems and figure out together what's going to be best for that particular patient, then I think we can make a world a better place.
A coworker friend of mine named Cherry, she shared a story for this episode as well. She had somebody house sitting her dogs for her while she was away, and they were telling her how much they are enjoying getting treats. And then when she proceeded to say that she'd given half a box of raisins already, Cherry was like, "Oh, no. They cannot have raisins." And the friend was like, "I thought you said they can't have grapes." And she was like, "Well, the important thing here is to keep in mind a raisin is in fact a dried grape. And so they are still a no-go. They are still toxic to pets."
I wish I could tell you this has only happened to me one time, but it hasn't. And it's happened to me enough that my filter has flown off the handle when I try to educate clients about what's toxic to their pet. So, chocolate, raisins, grapes, tomatoes, onions. I will repeatedly get this response, but he loves them. I mean, what part of toxic are we not meeting on the same level with? Like, toxic means deadly. Toxic means you eat it and you could die. I like donuts. While they're not healthy for me, they're not toxic.
It's all well and good when you choose to eat something you shouldn't. That is a decision that you made. Pets don't have that choice. They eat what we feed them. So to feed them a grape because they like them is not a good excuse, because you are in turn feeding them something that is potentially fatal. And I mean, they wouldn't know if they liked it or not because they shouldn't have been offered them in the first place, if that makes sense. I also happened to find some things on Reddit, and I have one here for a concerned owner. This owner says, "I am worried my depression is affecting my dog. He just lays around all day and never barks. He's still sweet and playful whenever I walk and interact with him, but when I'm doing stuff, he just lays around and sleeps." One person called Immense says he can only do so much on his own. And another response, the response from Otto says, "Get him a PS5. A response to Otto from B says, "The puppy Station 5. Which I think
I love it. Funny. I think we just found our retirement project of making a puppy Station 5. Because what's funny is with the traditional tube TVs, we consistently could not prove that dogs could watch TV, right? The frames per second was not right, the color scheme. So for the longest time, dogs really couldn't watch TV very well. Now with these new flat screen LEDs, I mean, there's dog TV. My own Frenchie Franny, she gets her channel on when we go somewhere. She gets to watch birds and things, and I don't know how much she watches it, but it makes us feel better. That could be our new project. We could make up the puppy Station 5. There was a study published that they found a correlation between an owner's heart rate and a dog's heart rate. They took owners and their dogs and they compared heart rates, and owners that had faster heart rates, dogs had faster heart rates. No, there's no relationship in breed, right? We're taught smaller dogs have faster heart rates than larger dogs. And they were seeing more correlation between what the owner's heart rate was versus the dogs. I know clients, at least at my hospital, it didn't take me long to figure out the owners who liked me and trusted me, their pets did fine. The owners that were like new to our clinic, didn't know me, their dog did not behave well because of the anxiety effect. the comment about the dog can only do so much by himself. I mean, yeah, maybe that's true. There is a little bit of lack of stimulation when we're not around. There are some puzzle toys and some things they can engage by themselves. But some dogs, like people, just don't engage by themselves as well as other dogs. If you're going through something, they feel that too. There's a reason why they can detect cancers and low blood sugar and a seizure episode. Their intuitive ability, especially for their owners, is almost supernatural. Let's talk about what the alternative is. The alternative is while you're gone, they're scared, they're anxious without you, very codependent. What do those types of dogs do? They're very active at home, but it's because they are destructive. To me, a dog that doesn't have any stimulus to react to, if they are sleeping, that means they are comfortable in their environment. As a dog mom, that's, to me, very comforting.
Let's take a break here to hear what the sponsors have to say. We will be back in a jiffy for more Bad Pet Advice fun. See you soon.
You know the expression, cats have 9 lives. Well, what if you can give them one more? The Give Them 10 movement is on a mission to help give cats an extra life. How? With spay and neuter. Spaying or neutering your cat helps them live a longer, healthier life. And it helps control free-roaming cat populations too. Learn more about the benefits of spay and neuter and meet Scooter, the neutered cat, at GiveThem10.org. That's GiveThem10.org.
Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back, friends. Let's get back to the show.
We have another Reddit question. My husky started having this bizarre, erratic behavior out of nowhere. She just starts and stops and looks back at the ground. It's been going on for a few hours now. She's pacing around the house. We've checked for ticks. She gets dewormed every month, and she's eating and drinking normally. She's just jerking her head towards things that aren't there, almost like she can feel something periodically touching her tail. She is a 2-year-old purebred husky. She's never demonstrated behavior like this before. Anybody know what this behavior could be? So I have some responses here, and the responses are actually the best part of this post. I have a response from Ziggy that says it could be a twinge of pain or it's a haunted house. Our next response comes from Crafty, and Crafty said to keep in mind that sometimes animals sense oncoming earthquakes by picking up the frequency shift of substrata and can exhibit this type of behavior. Some dogs can even sense the shift days before an event. You may check the maps and links online for any information on earthquake activities in your area. Another response, her name fittingly is Lilith the Ghost, which makes sense. She says, silly question, but has anyone recently died or a pet? So, that's concerning, right? And our final response is from Loose Moose and said, any chance you have mice in the floors? My concern here is, yes, there were some comments that I read that were actually people trying to be helpful, and maybe these people are too, but this is the kind of advice that may instill panic in somebody.
All the while, it could just be an anal gland problem or butt itching. I don't know about you, but sometimes there are some phone calls and owners are frantic about something like that. They are going to put a 1-star review on your Google review if you tell them we are full and we have to schedule you tomorrow, right? Those in the vet professions hearing those signs and being like, that can wait till tomorrow. But these owners are just frantic that this is a life-threatening situation.
Surely one of the first calls someone would make in this situation is going to be to the exterminator, right? Because you might have mice in your floors. And then to the psychic, because you're like, well, did somebody or a pet die recently and now they're haunting my dog? Then you may want to do the research regarding whether or not there is an earthquake coming. And after you exhaust these options here, then you consult with the vet and be like, hey, my dog keeps looking at his butt. What should I do? That's that would be the order of operations, in my opinion.
Exactly. I'm just hearing these responses. If I had no knowledge about what's going on with my dog, I would be calling for an emergency appointment right now because I need to know if someone's died or if there's an earthquake happening or whatever the case may be. I understand now. I understand how people can become frantic listening to the antics of others. Maybe I'm not like everybody, but there are people that I meet that I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be friends with you, right? There's just people that you don't want to associate with, that you don't want to spend time with for whatever reason. But when you open yourself up on the internet and ask these questions to everybody, you are opening yourself up to everybody. And they come from all belief systems, all walks of life, all lines of medication takers, But if you're not going to be willing to be friends and take in everyone's advice that you meet face to face, at least, I guess, second guess opening yourself up online to everybody and anybody's thoughts and processes. I think it's a worthy conversation of how do we limit this? We're never going to eliminate people seeking advice outside of the experts. How do we mitigate that? Like really seeing what the barriers are to people wanting to ask their questions to veterinarians.
I have another Facebook response here from Ava Diaz. She had a client who declined her advice to get her new Shih Tzu puppies spayed and neutered because they were brother and sister and know not to do that.
I actually had that exact same thing happen in a room. There is more than one owner that believes that because I've met a few of them. We really personify our pets. And what that means is there's so many times they act human that we unintentionally put too much human characteristics onto them. Sexual reproduction is more of a biological thing. Humans have a little bit higher philosophy for it, but in its raw nature, it is a biological action. I also think people will believe a lot of crazy things to try to avoid something that they don't want. It's much easier to believe and hope that, well, their brother and sister, they're not going to do that, than to pay for the procedures. The situation I was involved with was in St. Louis, Missouri. They were bringing in pups. They were like, we don't need to talk about spay and neutering because they're brother and sister. And I'm like, oh, yeah, we do because it's still a thing. They're like, no, they won't do that. That's gross. And I'm like, to them, it's just biology. It's making sure your genetic material goes on.
Another Facebook response I got from Lexi Pollock. She has heard people say to stick your finger into a dog's butt to stop a dog fight. This one seems different.
That would be possibly effective. I've never tried that. I kind of want to now, actually. Maybe not with my finger poking in that area. I don't know. That's an interesting thought. Having some science behind a dog fight. So dog fights happen when all logic, everything goes out the window and all you can see is becoming dominant over that person or thing, right? It's very primal. And so a lot of times dogs just won't respond to anything. That's how people get bit trying to break up a dog fight. They are so focused on that other opponent and winning, and they're not feeling that external stimuli. Water being splashed, right? A lot of people have tried that. Even though we jump in as humans because we want it to stop, it's very dangerous and difficult to break up a very heated dog fight. It's much easier to keep it from happening. It never happens till it does. Being a responsible pet owner and expecting the unexpected, have your dog on a leash so that they can't get to that point where you can't pull them apart, right? So while the poke in the butt is entertaining to think about, not safe at all. I wouldn't condone it.
How are you supposed to reach both dog butts, right? Like you got to get both at the same time, unless they're both small dogs. Your arms are just not going to be long enough to do both of the larger dogs. I mean, do you just pick one and hope for the best?
Right. You do have two hands. So if you can get around to both sides, I mean, that's a possibility. Love it. Love it.
There is that old wives' tale out there that says that if a dog bites you, you should bite them back.
That's a great way to get a scar on your face. The TikTok videos of people growling and barking right in their dog's face yet to get their dog's reaction. The ones that I've seen, yes, they're comical, but I'm waiting for that one dog that snap and bite their owner's face off because you're startling the dogs. And think about the dogs that they were doing that to, right? I think all dogs can be mean. I think all dogs can be nice, but they were picking dogs that were easily startled. I think I saw one that did a Great Dane. They weren't picking little Chihuahuas and Poodles. They were picking large dogs that could fit their whole face in their mouth. We as humans, we have emotional highs and lows, and there are times we'll fly off the handle, we'll have a reflex reaction, and we're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, right? At the cost of sounding too humanistic for pets, I think pets have that same thing too, where they'll have that brief lack of judgment and they react to something. The damage is done, right? Once you're bitten, you're bitten. Some situations can't be fixed. That is the unpredictability of animals.
Those TikTok challenges that involve dogs seem dangerous, especially if you have a nervous dog. Many people don't understand dog behaviors, like they don't know how to interpret them well enough to determine if this is a good idea, which in most cases is probably not. I mean, you may wind up okay, but is it worth the risk? I always taught my grooming students, and now the newbies that come into the veterinary field, not to put their face in a dog's face, especially if you don't know the dog. I mean, even if you do know the dog, it's best not to test this out. I personally like my face too much to get it bitten off, especially not for a TikTok trend. Never mind while I'm at work, and I don't want to see it happen to anybody else either.
We should probably include the peanut butter on the face to trim nails while we're talking about TikTok and the things that people do. Remember that era? So people were to trim their dog's toenails, putting saran wrap on their faces. Sometimes they weren't putting anything on them, and then putting peanut butter on their foreheads so that the peanut butter off the forehead while they were trimming the nails. That was another face bite waiting to happen. I don't know how many people got bit from that whole situation.
Saran wrap on the face? It sounds like a really bad idea, actually.
Well, you don't want to get all messy, greasy peanut butter on your forehead, do you?
I think I hear that serial killers are usually the ones that you hear wrapping saran wrap over someone's face. And it's usually not for like nice reasons.
Yeah.
Explaining that injury is going to be very strange. Like my dog was licking peanut butter off my face, and now I have a severe pink eye infection or no nose. I have another Facebook post in trying to get some assistance for their cat with urinary issues. My cat, Bobby, keeps weeing in corners. I took people's advice and went to the vet with him. He said that male cats don't get urinary infections because they're too clean. They get blockages. Though I've also tried Feel Away plug-in, it hasn't worked either. I have tried extra cat trays, but nothing seems to work. He's getting worse, doing it in new places. I'm going crazy. He's ruining my wooden floors, which is starting to lift. He's such a sweet, loving boy. He knows he's done wrong, and when I try to stop him, he runs away. Any other suggestions, please? From Sandy.
What have we been talking about this whole time? You need to go to your veterinarian and not your breeder, not on Reddit. Here's an owner who, by all identifications, did the right thing, took the cat to the vet, right? But clearly did not get 100% accurate advice. However that went down, my hope is that the veterinarian said most of the time there's no bacterial cause. So fluted, feline lower urinary tract disease syndrome, if you will, they will get bladder irritation. And when you culture these guys, they come up negative, right? Hopefully the conversation went something like, most of the time they're not infectious. There are things that we can do to help, right? There's fluids, anti-inflammatories, gabapentin to help with the neural pain and whatnot. And there's special diets. Hopefully that conversation happened like that. But something in the translation messed up because he came home thinking that there's no hope. I have no doubt that their content is correct. But if we can't get that content into the owner's brain, it doesn't do any good. If they're on their cell phone or they have 3 5-year-olds in the exam room and you clearly know that they are not listening to you, stop that appointment. Be like, hey, this looks like a very bad time to really be talking about this. Can I email you the information? This does not look like a good time to really absorb what's going on with your cat. So we need to take charge and not just ignore our guts. I know I gave you a lot of information. I know I gave you stuff that doesn't make sense initially. What can we re-go over to make sure that you have all of the information that you need? I think we focus too much on saying everything and getting a 45-minute lecture of fluted in on a 10-minute conversation with the owner and hammering them with a bunch of information when we really need to be focused on, do they understand what we're saying? And that's an ongoing battle, because once you figure out how to communicate with one person, you've got another person in another room with a completely different situation. So it's an ever-evolving thing.
Yeah, I just don't see a veterinarian out there blatantly saying cats don't get urinary tract infections.
I hope so for our sake, right?
Actually, I do have a pickup line that I want to share with you. Do you believe in love at first sniff?
Potentially. I would say that is how I adopted my dog, Fran. So Franny was a C-section. When you start off in your profession, you have no idea where it's going to take you. And for me, it was being the neighborhood Frenchie breeder veterinarian. So I was doing a routine C-section and delivering these puppies. I already had a brindle Frenchie named Frankie, and thought I was fine with just one. I was delivering these pups, and there was only one brindle in the litter. I'm sending the puppies to the neonatal area, and I hear one of my technicians say, "Oh my gosh, it's a Frankie Jr." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I get done with the C-section. It's time to bring the pups in for mom to nurse them and clean them and stuff." And it was love at first sight with little Fran. She fit in my hand. She was just the cutest little thing. I carried her to my husband's office, and I was like, look at how cute she is. I was hoping for the reaction of, oh my gosh, we have to have her. That wasn't the reaction I got. You could tell he was this is a red flag for me. And my surgery technician, who's known me forever, comes in after I leave, and he asks her, do I have another dog? She said, I think you do. And sure enough, at the 4-week health check, she was so cute. I introduced her to Frankie, and she was the only puppy in the entire litter that was like following him around and just loving him at first sight. I wasn't in the market for another dog, but I sure fell in love instantly. And I think she fell in love with her brother at first sniff because it was instantaneous. She was all over him. This is my new big brother. There was no other reason for her to love him except that she is supposed to be my next puppy. Even though my scientific brain says that's really not possible, my mommy heart says, oh yeah, I think it can be possible.
Do you know anything about aquatic frogs?
I will do exotics. So, I started doing exotics because I wanted to do pet birds, which turned into chickens and poultry and ducks and geese. And then that turned into rabbits, guinea pigs, hamsters. I cannot do snakes. Then got into the oxalotls when they got popular, and then the aquatic turtles, aquatic frogs. You'd be shocked at how many people get exotic animals in Missouri.
From Facebook, Catherine Rogers says, as I was walking into a local pet store, another customer was walking out with a small aquatic frog in a bag. An associate stepped out of the doors and shouted across the parking lot. I asked my manager, it doesn't need oxygen. Ugh. And I get her sentiment at that last statement. Ugh. Because, what doesn't need oxygen? You know what I mean? Even if it is an aquatic frog, it still has to have the water aerated to incorporate oxygen. So, don't leave it in the bag, obviously.
Wow. So maybe this topic is, what are the hiring requirements to work in a pet store? Most pet stores do not require any college degree in any type of biology, zoology. Obviously, there are people that will learn on the job. I don't care what kind of training you get. It's pretty minimal. And that's not to say anything bad about pet stores. They're understaffed like everybody else. Half the time they come unhealthy. They don't really know in perspective what healthy should look like. They are burdened with other tasks besides just taking care of these animals. A lot of times they don't have time to recognize when something's sick. They don't have the training. So I think a lot of pet stores have figured out that The profit is in the inventory, the behavioral classes, the grooming, and maybe not selling those pets. Well, let's talk about the bird fairs and the bird auctions. Oh my gosh, that is a crazy industry. There's a flea market in Missouri called Jacob's Cave. We would be booked solid for the 3 weeks after Jacob's Cave of sick animals from that flea market. So thinking about bad pet advice, getting your animal at a flea market is terrible. Getting it from a pet store isn't ideal either, just because these animals have been through so much stress at such a young age between breeding and shipping and trying to get into a new environment that's maybe not 100% ideal for them. These pets are not tested. They aren't vaccinated. You don't know their history really. And all of a sudden you're culminating all of these animals from different areas to share their germs with everyone. It's kind of like daycare without any regulation. If you're wanting a stress-free, no surprise type animal, pet store, flea markets, and auctions are just not the place to go.
So where is the best place then?
Well, yeah, that is a good question. So don't purchase it from anywhere. So when I describe a good breeder, it is an individual who has this as a hobby, not really their way of life. They don't have a lot of breeding partners. Depending on what species you're dealing with, maybe having couple of litters, couple of clutches a year in a home setting. They don't have rows of kennels. You don't want a breeder that has so many animals. They don't even know who was born when or who was born to which, because females will nurse each other's babies, right? They'll raise them together. So numbers really matter. It's also good to know if they have a veterinarian that they have a good relationship with. The right weight costs money. So that would be your ideal breeder. I do have a funny story about a cat breeding situation. I volunteer every year in the Caribbean and work 2 weeks. I was doing a health certificate for some people who had beautiful Persian cats out of New Jersey. These cats are like fancy feast commercial quality. They had no tear staining. Coats were beautiful. Teeth were perfect. No gingivitis, no herpes ulcers. I mean, the perfect Persian cats. I was amazed. I had never seen a more beautiful Persian cat in my life, and they had 2 of them. They had no idea where I was from, who I was. They never met me before. And I just had to compliment them. I was like, hey, your cats are gorgeous. I have to ask you where you got them. And the other answer was, well, I'll tell you where I didn't get them. Missouri. And I was like, how funny that you say that, because that's where I'm from. She said, I didn't mean to insult you, but every cat breeder in Missouri overbreed. They have too many queens. They are riddled with viral infections. They're all snotty nosed. And I couldn't argue with her because we are called the puppy mill of the United States for a reason. It doesn't just mean that we're the puppy mill of dogs. We are also the kitty mill too. And she could sell them at high dollar because there was only 10 of them a year available.
I have a submitted story from a user that wants to remain anonymous. She said the owner of the first hospitals she used to work in used to tell owners to control their new puppy, they need to speak their language. They needed to growl like a mama dog. He would then demonstrate how he growls, and they would try to move back during the ears, eyes, nose, and throat exam. He growled at adult dogs that grumbled at him during invasive exams. He never caught on that they were confused and more anxious. They were unaffected by his attempts to be their mama.
First of all, shout out to vet techs. I miss my girls back in Missouri. Something fierce. I have met many, including you, many great, competent vet techs. I'm glad that I moved to Florida because I wouldn't have been able to work with you guys otherwise. And it takes a team. And I would definitely tell vet techs, you've got to be able to mesh with your doctor, right? So listen to that gut instinct. First, ask questions, come with an open mind. But if it's not meshing with who you are and what you believe in, you do not want to work with somebody you can't get behind. You are not going to help grow the practice that way, because that turmoil, that resistance, that lack of respect is going to show through. And there are some veterinarians that I just don't mess with personally. There was a veterinarian who I believe now permanently retired in Missouri in the early 2000s. And I had hired one of her technicians, wonderful vet tech, awesome person, so loyal. She's a rock solid gal. She described to me the process at which this veterinarian did allergy testing. And we all have our opinions, right? There are blood tests, skin testing that most dermatologists like to do otherwise. But this was a technique I had never heard before. She had a licensed technician, a prison, just like a hanging glass prison, and the dog on the table. She would make the technician hold her hand out near the prison, and they would speak and verbalize an allergy. Let's say we want to see if the dog's allergic to ragweed. She would speak ragweed to the prison. If the dog was allergic, the technician's arm would move. This is true. This is true testing in Missouri, people. True testing in the 90s. If the technician's arm would move, then the dog was positive for ragweed. If the technician's arm did not move, it was not positive. And I say that story to tell vet techs, if you don't mesh with your doctor, we are in a deficit, girls and guys. You can get a job down the street. Find a doctor that you believe in, that shares your values, your work ethic, and work your heart out for them. Don't try to stick yourself a round peg in a square hole, right? If you just don't fit with that doctor, with that clinic, it's not saying that you're bad and there's anything wrong with you. And it's not saying that that doctor's bad, there's anything wrong with them. Remember, we're all on that same team. We want to create a good environment to work in. We want to have good care for our pets and our clients. And you can't do that if you're constantly second guessing the sanity of your doctor.
I honestly couldn't imagine being a technician in the room while a doctor's barking and growling at the patient. I might not be able to take him serious. Or I might be looking over at the owner's expression because I'm like, what? How are they handling this? Because I'm going to be concerned. They're going to think he has lost touch with reality, right? It would just be so bizarre to me. So in conclusion, there are reputable sources available if you have pet questions. It is best to reach out to the professionals. It's important to know that motor oil does not kill fleas. That's per Dr. Mowdy. Should not have it. Bleach by mouth to kill parvo is not a thing that works. Neosporin is not an eye medication. Please pay attention that you do not put eye meds in the ears or ear meds in the eyes. This is very commonly confused. And if you have a pet that had previous eye issues and a new eye issue comes up, don't just start using the drops you have unless you have previous instructions from your veterinarian to do so, because you don't want to risk using a steroid in an eye that may have some type of ulcer or injury. This is per Dr. Spears. She is an animal ophthalmologist. Before believing old wives' tales, such as putting a kitten's paws in butter when you first put them outside so they can find their way back home. That feels like nonsense. Also, use caution when reaching out to places like Reddit for your veterinary advice because you do not know what you're going to wind up getting in return. I do want to thank Dr. Beddoe for being here with us today. It was very informative and had a really good time learning about what kind of things we don't want to do.
I think we pretty well covered it. Until next time. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you and getting to share opinions and stories and perspective. And I hope that I have contributed and you have walked away with something special after this podcast. And certainly will give some thumbs ups for this podcast.
If you guys have any other questions or concerns for her.
I'm not really on any social media, but I will give out my email. If somebody wants to contact me, that email is R as in rabbit, B as in my last name, Beddoe, I as in igloo, N as in Nancy, JC@yahoo.com. My husband, Robert Beddoe, has all kinds of social media. He has Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. So if you want to message him and be like, hey, I want to talk to your wife. That's not uncommon for him, and he will not think anything of it. I'd be happy to talk with you. I am semi-retired now, so I actually have time to invest in people. So that's been very refreshing.
We do have a really fun AI song all about misinformation in the pet world. I hope you guys enjoy it. It's a real bopper, a bop of a hit. I don't know what you cool kids call good songs these days. Anyway, you can find our social media information in our show notes. Please come by and see us. Say hi on the Facebooks, Instagrams. I am in the works of getting us a TikTok made that someone much cooler than me is going to manage. So there is that. Otherwise, I really appreciate you guys being here to bust some myths, some bad advice. We'll see you guys again. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Saw a post just yesterday, said feed your cat some chocolate bars. Let's set that myth straight right away. It's a one-way ticket to the vet's car. Heard a whisper on the street, said dogs can share your morning brew. Caffeine makes their hearts skip a beat. Trust me, they'll be bouncing off the roof. Bad pet advice, it's all around. Let's debunk it pound by pound with our pal Dr. Beddoe on the mic, setting wrongs right for Fluffy and Spike. Someone said a fish can thrive in a wine glass, crystal clear. But even castles let them dive. This bowl's a prison cell, I fear. Think your hamster needs a walk. He won't last a city block. A tiny wheel will do just fine. Let that critter stay inside. Bad pet advice, it's all around. Let's debunk it pound by pound with our pal Dr. Beddoe on the mic, setting wrongs right for Fluffy and Spike.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.